Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Albert embraced the tranquility of the evening as they meticulously prepared for their private ritual. The atmosphere within the intimate bedroom held a magical touch, enhancing the enchanting blue satin fabric. Under warm lighting, the dress shimmered, exuding an ethereal vibe as they gently ran their hands along the smooth surface. The mirror's reflection unveiled a mesmerizing new persona, distinct from the individual who operated through the day. The once short and practical brown hair, now gently cascading in softer waves, meticulously styled with consideration to accentuate a countenance enhanced by discreet, self-taught makeup skills. In the safety of seclusion, breathing became a liberating act. Ariella, a moniker chosen with great precision, resonated as a refreshing identity during moments like this. Hidden from scrutiny, the relief from societal expectations was palpable. The outside world knew only Albert, 32, accountant, reliable son who called his parents every Sunday. But here, Ariella emerged, practicing her walk, her gestures, her voice. The weekend house sat quiet, parents away on what should have been a week-long business trip for his father. The freedom of an empty house had been luxurious. Music played softly from the speakers as Ariella practiced walking in the modest heels she'd ordered online, delivered in discreet packaging. The sound of a car door shutting outside froze her mid-step. No one should be home. Not for days. Footsteps on the porch, keys jingling, the front door opening. "Albert? You home, son?" Her father's voice echoed through the house. Panic surged as Ariella looked at herself in the mirror. Blue satin dress, padded bra creating a modest but feminine silhouette, makeup carefully applied. No time to change, no place to hide. Footsteps approached the bedroom door. A light knock. "Albert? Lights on under your door. You in there?" The door handle turned before any response could form. The door swung open. Frank Peterson stood in the doorway, still dressed in his business suit, travel bag in hand. The moment stretched between them, suspended in shock and revelation. "Dad?" Ariella whispered, voice barely audible. "You weren't supposed to be home until Friday." Frank's expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and something unreadable. He set his bag down slowly, like a man carefully considering his next move. "Meeting ended early," he said simply. His eyes took in the scene. His child in the blue satin dress, the makeup, the transformed appearance. "Mind if I come in?" The question felt surreal. Ariella nodded, unable to speak, bracing for anger, disgust, disappointment. Any of the reactions dreaded during countless sleepless nights, imagining this exact scenario. Frank entered and sat on the edge of the bed, loosening his tie. "That's a nice color on you." The simple comment broke something open. Tears threatened, blurring the carefully applied mascara. "You're not angry?" Ariella's voice wavered. Frank sighed, rubbing his hand across his face. "Surprised, yes. Angry? No." He paused, studying his child's face. "How long?" "Months. Years of thinking about it, but actually doing it a few months." Frank nodded, seemingly processing this information. Then he did something completely unexpected. He laughed softly. "What's funny?" Ariella asked, tension still gripping her shoulders. "Life has a strange way of coming full circle." Frank unbuttoned his suit jacket. I spent half of my sophomore year in college dressing as Francis. The words hung in the air, impossible to process. You... what? Frank smiled, a hint of nostalgia softening his features. It was the 80s. Different time, different circumstances. My roommate was in theater, needed help with a project. I discovered I enjoyed it more than I expected. Kept it up for a while. Ariella sank slowly onto the vanity chair, blue satin pooling around her. Why didn't you ever tell me?
Some things get packed away when you think they need to be. Your mother knows. We talked about it early in our relationship.
He looked at his child with new understanding.
Is this occasional for you, or something more?
The question opened doors Ariella had only peeked through herself. I don't know yet. It feels right. More right than anything has in a long time. Frank nodded. Your eyeliner technique needs work. A surprised laugh escaped. What? The wing is uneven.
Here.
He stood, approaching the vanity. May I? Stunned, Ariella handed him the eyeliner pen. With surprising deftness, Frank corrected the line. You really do know what you're doing. Some skills you don't forget. He stepped back, examining his work.
What do you call yourself when you're like this? Ariella. Beautiful name.
He smiled.
Well, Ariella, that dress is lovely, but the cut doesn't quite flatter your shoulders.
Have you thought about something with a different neckline? The conversation flowed into unexpected territory. Frank offering suggestions on style, makeup techniques he remembered, stories from his own experiences. The tension dissolved into something neither could have anticipated. Connection. Understanding. Your mother returns tomorrow, Frank mentioned as their conversation wound down. Would you like me to talk to her first, or would you prefer to tell her yourself? Fear flickered anew. What will she think? The woman married someone who once borrowed her dresses. I think she might surprise you. Frank squeezed her shoulder. But it's your choice, your journey. Could you prepare her, maybe? Then I'll talk to her. Of course. Frank yawned. It's been a long day of travel. I should get some sleep. He paused at the door. This weekend, if you're comfortable, we could go shopping. Find you something that fits properly. I'd like that, Ariella said, warmth spreading through her chest. Frank nodded. Good night, Ariella. Good night, Dad. The door closed, leaving Ariella alone again, but the room felt different now. The mirror reflected the same blue dress, the same brown hair, the same made-up face, but the person looking back seemed lighter somehow, as if a burden had begun to lift. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. The last 2 days had been a whirlwind of conversations, first with Frank preparing Margaret, then Margaret sitting with Ariella, asking questions, listening, sharing her own surprise but ultimate acceptance. There had been tears, hugs, moments of uncertainty, but never rejection. Now, dressed in simple jeans and a button-up shirt, Albert prepared to step out publicly as Ariella for the first time. The makeup was subtle. Foundation, light eyeshadow, mascara applied under Frank's surprisingly expert guidance. The brown hair was styled softly around the face, feminine but natural. Ready? Margaret called from downstairs. Taking a deep breath, Ariella descended the stairs. Her parents waited by the front door, both smiling encouragingly. You look wonderful, Margaret said, adjusting Ariella's collar slightly. "The mall might be busy on a Saturday. Are you sure you're comfortable with this?" "No," Ariella admitted, "but I need to do it anyway." The drive to the shopping center passed with casual conversation, an attempt at normalcy that calmed frayed nerves. The first steps from the car into the public space sent Ariella's heart racing, certain that everyone was staring, judging, but most people simply walked past, absorbed in their own errands and concerns. The first store they entered specialized in women's evening wear. A salesperson approached, professional smile in place.
"Can I help you find something today?"
Frank stepped forward smoothly.
"My daughter is looking for a cocktail dress. Something in red, perhaps? The blue she has doesn't quite work with her coloring."
The word daughter sent a tremor through Ariella. Fear, validation, gratitude all mingled together. "Of course," the salesperson, whose name tag read Diane, responded without missing a beat. "What sort of occasion?" "Just something versatile," Ariella answered, voice carefully modulated to a higher register than usual. "Something I could wear to different events. Let's see what we have that might work for you." Diane led them through the store, pulling several options. "The fitting rooms are in the back. Would you like me to help you with sizing?" "I've got her measurements," Margaret interjected gently. "We'll call if we need assistance." In the privacy of the fitting room, Ariella tried on dress after dress. Some clung awkwardly to the wrong places, others failed to accommodate broader shoulders. Frustration mounted until Margaret handed over a red A-line dress with 3/4 sleeves and a modest V-neck. "Try this one," she suggested. The fabric slipped over Ariella's head, settling perfectly around her frame. The cut disguised the masculine angles, emphasized the waist, and the color brought warmth to her complexion. The mirror reflected someone who looked natural, comfortable, herself. "Oh," she breathed. Margaret smiled behind her. "That's the one." When they emerged to show Frank, his eyes lit up. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. They purchased the red dress along with appropriate undergarments and accessories. Each transaction, each interaction where Ariella was accepted as herself, built confidence. By the time they stopped for lunch at a cafe in the mall, the constant anxiety had dulled to manageable levels.
"I've been thinking,"
Frank said as they waited for their food.
"Your lease is up soon on your apartment. Have you considered moving somewhere new? A fresh start might be easier."
Ariella considered this. "I have savings. I could relocate. Maybe to Portland? I've heard it's more progressive there." "You could," Margaret agreed. "Or you could take your time."
"No need to rush major decisions. The company has an office in Seattle,"
Frank mentioned.
"I know the regional manager. If you wanted to transfer within the firm."
The conversation continued, practical considerations mixing with dreams and possibilities. For the first time, Ariella allowed herself to imagine a future where she didn't have to hide, where Ariella wasn't confined to locked bedrooms and secret moments. The shopping bags beside her held more than new clothes. They contained permission to become herself. 3 months later, Ariella stood in her new apartment in Seattle, unpacking the last of her boxes. The red dress hung in her closet alongside a carefully curated wardrobe that reflected her true self. The brown hair had grown out slightly, now styled in a feminine bob that framed her face perfectly. The transfer to the Seattle office had gone smoothly, aided by Frank's connection with the regional manager. Ariella had arrived as herself, introduced herself with her chosen name, begun the process of legal name change. her new colleagues knew her only as Ariella Peterson, the competent accountant from the Eastern office. Her phone chimed with a text message from Diane, the salesperson from the mall who had, surprisingly, become a friend and guide in this new chapter. They had exchanged numbers that day after Diane quietly mentioned having a transgender brother. Now she was coming over to help Ariella prepare for her first office social event. The doorbell rang 30 minutes later. Diane breezed in, carrying a makeup case and beaming with excitement. "Ready for your debut at the company mixer? This is huge!" Ariella smiled nervously. "I've been working there for 2 months already." "Yes, but this is different. This is cocktails and mingling and making social connections." Diane set down her makeup case. "Wearing that gorgeous red dress, you're going to make quite the impression." As Diane helped with makeup application, they chatted about work, about the process of finding community in a new city, about the video calls with Ariella's parents every Sunday. "They've been amazing," Ariella said, as Diane applied highlighter to her cheekbones. "Dad especially. He calls randomly just to check in, sends links to articles about transgender rights, asks questions about my experience. It's like he's making up for lost time." "That's beautiful. Not everyone gets that kind of support." Diane moved on to the eyes, applying shadow with expert precision. "Have you thought about hormone therapy? You mentioned considering it last time." "I have my first appointment with a specialist next week. Just a consultation, but it's a step." "That's fantastic!" Diane beamed. "Okay, look up for me. I'm going to do your mascara." An hour later, Ariella stood before the mirror in the red dress that had marked the beginning of her public journey. The makeup enhanced her natural features without being overdone. The brown hair, now grown out enough to no longer need the help of extensions, framed her face softly. "You look stunning," Diane declared. "Absolutely stunning." The office mixer was held at an upscale bar near the company headquarters. Ariella arrived slightly late, deliberately choosing to make her entrance when the party was already in full swing. Conversations paused briefly as she walked in. A few appreciative glances from coworkers who recognized her, but were seeing her outside the office setting for the first time. "Ariella, over here!" called Mark, her department manager, waving from near the bar. "We were wondering if you'd make it." She navigated through the crowd toward him, conscious of eyes following her progress, the red dress a beacon in the dimly lit space. "Sorry I'm late," she said, accepting the glass of wine he offered. "Traffic was terrible coming out of Capitol Hill." "Worth the wait," said Tricia from accounting, raising her glass. "That dress is fabulous on you." The conversation flowed easily, surprising Ariella with its normalcy. Work topics, weekend plans, complaints about Seattle traffic and weather. People addressed her naturally, included her in jokes, asked her opinion. "Peterson!" A booming voice cut through the ambient noise. Robert Griffin, the regional manager her father had known, approached with a broad smile. "How's our transfer settling in? Frank asks about you every time we talk." "Very well, thank you," Ariella responded, smiling. "Seattle has been welcoming." "Glad to hear it." He lowered his voice slightly. "Your father mentioned you've been through some changes recently. Wanted me to make sure the office was treating you properly." "Everyone's been wonderful," she assured him. "I appreciate your concern." "Good, good." He clapped her shoulder. "You're doing excellent work, by the way. The Harrington audit was impressive." The evening continued with similar interactions, professional respect mixed with social connection. By the time Ariella prepared to leave, she had made plans for coffee with 2 co-workers the following week and accepted an invitation to Trisha's dinner party. Walking to her car, phone in hand to text Diane about the successful evening, Ariella felt a sense of alignment she had never experienced before. The person she presented to the world now matched the person she knew herself to be. The text to Diane evolved into something different. Tonight went perfectly. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't performing or hiding. I was just living. Thank you for helping me get here. The reply came quickly. You did the hard work. I just provided the mascara. The decision to pursue hormone therapy came after careful consideration and extensive consultation. 6 months after moving to Seattle, Ariella began the process that would align her physical self more closely with her identity. The changes came gradually: subtle shifts in skin texture, fat distribution, emotional landscape. Her parents visited for a week around the 1-year anniversary of her move. Frank and Margaret marveled at the confidence their child now possessed, the ease with which she moved through the world as herself. You seem happy, Frank observed as they walked along the Seattle waterfront, the summer sun warming their shoulders. Truly happy. Ariella smiled, tucking a strand of brown hair behind her ear. The bob had grown out into a longer style that she typically wore loose around her shoulders. I am. For the first time, I feel comfortable in my own skin. That's all we ever wanted for you, Margaret said, linking her arm through Ariella's. Though I must say, you've developed your mother's expensive taste in shoes. They all laughed, continuing their stroll past boats and tourists. Ariella spotted a street photographer capturing candid shots of visitors and had a sudden impulse. Let's get a family photo, she suggested. We don't have any recent ones. The photographer positioned them against the backdrop of Puget Sound, the Seattle skyline visible in the distance. As the camera clicked, Ariella felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey from that moment of panic in her bedroom, blue satin dress, makeup smudged with nervous sweat, her father discovering her secret, to this moment of joy and acceptance had transformed not just her life, but her family as well. The photographer showed them the digital preview. 3 smiling faces, the family resemblance clear despite the changes Ariella had undergone. Her red sundress complemented her mother's coral blouse and her father's burgundy polo shirt. Perfect, Frank declared, reaching for his wallet. We'll take 2 prints. That evening, after her parents returned to their hotel, Ariella sat on her apartment balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. Her phone chimed with a text from Frank, the family photo, already set as his new phone background. The caption read, "My 2 favorite women." Tears blurred her vision momentarily. The journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges, always be growth. But in this moment, Ariella Peterson felt complete. The blue satin dress that had once been her secret refuge now hung in the back of her closet, a relic of a time when she had lived divided. The red dress, her first public declaration of self, held a place of honor. Her reflection in the balcony window showed a woman at peace, brown hair catching the last golden rays of sunlight, features softened by both makeup and hormone therapy, eyes clear and certain. This was who she had always been meant to be. 2 years after that fateful evening when Frank had returned home early to discover his son in a blue satin dress, Ariella hosted Thanksgiving dinner in her Seattle apartment. The table was set for 6, her parents, Diane and her brother Michael, and Ariella's new girlfriend, Rebecca. The red dress had been replaced for the occasion with an elegant burgundy sweater dress that hugged her curves. Real curves now, developed through hormone therapy and time. The brown hair had grown long enough to pull back into an elegant twist for the holiday celebration.
Need any help in the kitchen?
Frank called, making his way through the apartment with a bottle of wine in hand. He'd arrived early to assist with preparations, a tradition they'd established over the past couple of years.
Can you check the stuffing? I'm finishing the table settings.
Ariella arranged the last of the name cards, smiling at the one that read Ariella Peterson in her own handwriting. No more hiding, no more divisions between who she was and who the world saw. Frank appeared in the doorway, admiring the beautifully set table. Your mother will be impressed. She doesn't think either of us capable of domesticity. Yet here we are. Ariella laughed. Who would have thought?
Speaking of surprises,
Frank said, lowering his voice though they were alone in the apartment.
I brought something to show you.
He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it over. Inside was a faded photograph from the 1980s. A young man in a floral dress, brown hair like Ariella's, smiling somewhat self-consciously at the camera. Francis, Ariella whispered, recognizing her father's younger self in his cross-dressing days.
I found it when we were cleaning out the attic last month. Thought you might like to see where some of your fashion sense comes from.
Frank's eyes twinkled with mischief and affection. Ariella studied the image, seeing echoes of herself in her father's younger face. You know, you made a pretty woman.
Not as pretty as my daughter,
Frank replied, genuine pride in his voice.
You've become exactly who you were meant to be. I couldn't ask for more than that.
The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of the first guests. Ariella carefully returned the photo to its envelope, tucking it safely in a drawer before going to welcome her friends and family. As the apartment filled with conversation and laughter, Ariella moved through the space she had created for herself. A home, a career, relationships built on authenticity rather than performance. The blue satin dress that had once been her only expression of true self now seemed like a distant memory, a caterpillar's cocoon long since abandoned. The journey that had begun in fear and secrecy had led her here, to a life lived openly, to family connections strengthened rather than broken by truth, to the freedom of aligning her outer expression with her inner reality. As she took her seat at the head of the table, surrounded by people who loved her for exactly who she was, Ariella Peterson raised her glass.
To unexpected journeys,
she toasted, her gaze meeting her father's across the table.
And to becoming ourselves. To becoming ourselves,
everyone echoed, glasses clinking in the warm light of Thanksgiving. Outside the windows of Ariella's apartment, Seattle continued its usual rhythm, indifferent to the small celebration taking place within its bounds. But inside, around a table laden with food and memories, a family celebrated the bravery of authenticity and the unexpected gifts that come from living one's truth. Ariella, in her burgundy dress, her brown hair catching the light from the dining room chandelier, had traveled far from that panicked moment when a door had opened on her secret self. The journey had not always been easy, but sitting here, surrounded by love and acceptance, she knew without doubt that it had been worth every step.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!